good, YouTube? Welcome back to JY's Adventures. We are back. Thank y'all so much for supporting. In this video, we got a new video from Cinema Summary, how to beat your worst fears in Rupture. Y'all already know, fam. Cinema Summary always breaks it down for us, and we be chilling, enjoying this, you know what I'm saying? This is a place where you could like watch videos that you love with a homie. Keep dropping reaction requests in the comment section, guys. I'll be sure to check them out when I get the chance to. And if you're new to the channel, be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. Link to the original videos down in the description. Let's get this video to 100 likes. And without any further ado, I already see spiders on this person's face, fam. Let's go.
If you were kidnapped and forced to face your deepest fears in the world's most horrifying experiment, what would you do? I'm going to break down the mistakes made, what you should do, and how to beat the evil scientist in Rupture. This woman has no idea she's a mutant. Renee here is getting ready for work when she notices a spider crawling on the sink. Her son Evan runs in to help her kill it, but she suddenly stops him, insisting he spare its life. Confused, he takes the spider outside, and the mother calms herself down. She's terrified of them, but soon this woman will be trapped in a mask full of tarantulas, and it's going to mutate her DNA. Renee walks into the kitchen to make breakfast when the ceiling light suddenly starts flickering, and the woman goes to the drawer, grabbing an X-Acto knife to fix it. She's a resourceful person who knows how to get things done, but outside the house, a mysterious man walks up to their car and places a strange device on the wheel. It's suspicious, and the family has no idea that spy cameras have been installed in their house, watching their every move. Later that day, Renee drops the kid off to spend time with his dad and says her goodbyes before she drives away, but another car is following close by. The strangers are stalking her, and that's when they activate the device they planted on her wheel. Suddenly, the tire pops, and she's forced to pull over to the side of the road. The woman gets out of her car to check the damage and realizes that she has a flat tire, but notices a strange device on the rim. That's when a mover's van parks nearby, and the driver walks over to the vehicle, offering to help her change the tire. Accepting his help, she hands him the spare wheel, but that's when he notices his colleague getting out of the van to take a smoke break. Something feels off, but before Renee can figure out what's going on, the man suddenly tackles her to the ground. With the woman restrained, his friend chases her straight into the neck until she finally goes limp. It was an ambush, and pulling out a roll of duct tape, he starts wrapping around her head before carrying her to the back of their van. Okay, Renee here should have seen this coming, because there were plenty of reasons to be skeptical about everything that just happened. First of all, as soon as she pulled over to the side of the road, it only took 15 seconds for another car to pull over and help her. Now, that might not seem suspicious, but if there's a strange device attached to the same tire that just popped, you shouldn't automatically assume that it's a coincidence. If we look at where we are, this road is in the middle of nowhere with no houses, no street cameras, and no traffic. It's the perfect place to rob someone in broad daylight, so if a stranger walks up to me in this kind of setting, I would definitely be on my guard. Now, even though this guy seems really friendly, he's also wearing nondescript clothing, which makes it more difficult to describe him to the police. If he's driving a truck like this, he should probably have a uniform with a company logo on it, so dressing like this suggests he might be using gray man tactics and can't be trusted. Lastly, we can't ignore that while this guy was pretending to change the tire, another car parked in the middle of the road across from them, which is suspicious as hell. If Renee here was paying attention, these four strange occurrences in such a short amount of time was more than enough to realize that she was being ambushed. This is easily one of the most practical survival instincts to have, because staying alert to your surroundings and questioning everyone's motives can be enough to save your life. Now, this woman let her guard down, but there was still something she could have done to make it easier to escape. If you're being tied down, one of the best survival strategies is to expand your body to make sure they aren't able to tape you down tightly. If it were me, I would open my jaw as wide as possible, because when I close my mouth afterwards, it's going to be much looser than when it was wrapped. This makes it easier for me to remove the tape and shout for help, or even use it to choke my captors when the opportunity presents itself. This woman also has long hair, so if I were her, I would have used it to try covering as much of my face as possible, because it will be easier to slip out of the tape. The kidnappers sit Renee down and cuff her to the bench, as this old woman grabs a pair of scissors and cuts the mother's pants open. She then places a bucket directly underneath her, warning that it's going to be a long ride. It's humiliating, and the woman walks out of the van, leaving the mother trapped in darkness. The vehicles start driving down the road, and Renee tries to break free from the cuffs, but she can't escape. That's when she spots her jeans on the floor and remembers the box cutter she left in the pocket. Stretching her legs as far as she can, Renee drags the pants towards her, slipping the X-Acto knife into her boot. That night, the truck stops at a gas station, and the older woman comes back in to check on her victim. Taking out a scalpel, scalpel, she cuts a hole into the tape and slips a straw inside to feed her water. That's when she reveals that sleeping pills have been dissolved inside, and Renee tries to spit it out, but there's nothing she can do to resist. The next morning, they strap her to a gurney and wheel her into a building until they reach a waiting room where they leave the woman behind. Terrified, Renee looks around and notices an injured man laying next to her. He explains that the kidnappers want to experiment on them, and she needs to remember the phrase G1012X. The mother tries asking where they are, but a guard walks in and takes the man away before he can tell her anything else. She's wheeled through the facility and moved to a separate room with no idea what the kidnappers want. It's terrifying, and this man tells her he needs to—
Man, imagine in that situation, fam. I would be so freaking scared, bro. You can't even do anything because they got you tied down, bro.
And this man tells her he needs to retrieve some tools before they begin. Lifting his bracelet to a scanner, the door unlocks and he walks out of the room. Finally alone, she looks around for something she can use and sees medical instruments on a tray. Renee is scared of what's going to happen next and screams for help, but that's when the man walks back in. He brings the tray of medical tools over to her and cuts the material, taking a moment to rub her face, and comments how interesting her skin is. It's very strange, and he unlocks one of the leather straps around her leg. Immediately, Renee starts fighting back and tries to break free, but the guy holds her down, making it clear there's no escaping this. Okay, this place might look run down, but they have some pretty sophisticated technology in the building, and it's a good sign that escaping is unlikely. First of all, every one of her limbs have been strapped to a gurney, but even if she finds a way to free herself, she still has to get through that door. The problem is that it's triple bolted and can only be opened by a security bracelet attached to the staff's wrists. It's also likely there are cameras in the room watching her every move, and that means we aren't getting out of here without some help. Now, it might seem counterintuitive, but the truth is that during a kidnapping, the best chance you have to escape will almost always be during transport. It's very likely you'll be put in the back of a van or a car, and most trunks have an emergency release latch, which often glows in the dark. During the van ride, if she had taken a step back to look at the situation, the woman would have realized that getting out of the handcuffs was not the right approach. There are 3 different pairs of cuffs on her, but the silver lining here is that they're all attached to the bench, and that means if she frees the bench from the floor of the truck, she might be able to escape. It just so happens that this truck floor has a thin layer of plywood on it, which means that this whole thing is being held down by only a few centimeters of loose wood. If you look here, you can also see that some of the screws are barely holding anything down at all. So if it were me, I would be spending all of my time trying to pull the bench up and out of the truck floor. You can also see here that the door might be able to be opened from the inside because there are these long metal poles that connect to the doorknob. If we pull these towards the center, it should open from the inside without the kidnappers knowing. Now, if we can't escape, it's important to keep track of how long we're traveling. If we can sense that the truck is moving at a steady pace, then they're likely driving on a highway. Since they're in the middle of kidnapping us, they won't be going over the average speed limit to avoid the cops, and this basic calculation gives us a rough idea of how far away we are from home. This is useful information because when we reach the kidnapper's base, if there's ever a chance of finding a phone, we'll be able to describe the building and give them a search radius to look for us in. Now, for the same reason, if you're being wheeled through the building, it's important to memorize the layout as much as you can. These kidnappers were smart to blindfold her until she reached the room, but there's still a way to learn about our environment. If it were me, I would listen to the sound of the kidnapper's shoes and count the footsteps as they wheel me through the corridor, because it's going to give us a good idea of how far away I am from the exit. The man puts her pants back on, explaining to her that she'll be put through some brutal tests and will be lucky to survive. He quickly walks out of the room and leaves the mother alone as she listens to a test subject screaming, unable to do anything to help. Desperate to escape, she starts shaking her foot until the box cutter finally slides out of her boot. Renee might have a way to get out of here and begins to nudge it across the gurney before bouncing the box cutter closer to her fingers. That's when she hears a man call out through the air vents, and the test subject introduces himself as Blake. She asks how long he's been here, and the man reveals he doesn't remember, but warns her that every victim must go through an experiment, and she'll be forced to face the thing she hates the most. Nervous, she asks Blake if he knows anything about G1012X, and the man has no idea what she's talking about. Frustrated, the woman struggles against her restraints, shaking the bed, and finally moves the box cutter in reach. That's when she hears a guard walk into Blake's room and turn on a power saw. It's horrible, and the woman can't do anything except listen to his screams. Later, Renee is cutting away at her restraints, but notices the door suddenly unlocking. The bald man and his assistant walk in to check on their test subject, but the woman refuses to cooperate. She wants to know if Blake is still alive, and the man tells her there is nobody in the room next door. He's messing with her mind, and the researchers put on goggles before setting up a video camera to record everything that's about to happen. Renee begs them to let her go, promising to keep this place a secret, but they ignore her pleas for help. Terrified, she asks if they've taken her son, and the kidnappers reassure the mother that he's safe with his father for now, making it clear they're keeping a close eye on her family. Okay, this is getting weird. They're torturing people in the next room with power saws, but to Renee, they're only asking questions about pregnancy and spiders. Now, as confusing as this seems, it actually gives us some really useful information. If they've brought us all this way just to ask us questions about our health, then it's fair to assume that they're not going to kill us right away. That means Renee here is making a huge mistake by cutting the restraints this early, and it changes how we should think about escaping. We've only just arrived, so someone is going to come in to check on her, and given that there's no way to get through the bolt lock, the smarter approach is to wait. If it were me, I would keep track of the hours until it's night, when the researchers have gone home. This will give me more time to form an escape plan and cut through all my restraints without interruption. Until then, the best option we have is to be the most willing and obedient subject in the entire building. This way, the researchers will spend less attention making sure we are cooperating, which gives us breathing room to plan our escape. When you are completely reliant on others for survival, expectation is the one thing that you can control. For example, if they trust you enough to unlock your handcuffs, then they might get complacent and leave you uncuffed for longer periods of time. Providing your kidnappers a pattern of behavior will make them think you are predictable, and that's something you can take advantage of when they least expect it. Now, these kidnappers aren't telling her why she's here, but we can get a clue based on the information they're asking for. They wanted to know her height, weight, and pre-existing conditions, but most importantly, they also asked what she's afraid of. The only reason they would drive across state lines and stick us in an empty room is because they want a controlled environment to take something from us, and it has everything to do with fear. Now, when we're forced to confront things that scare us, our bodies produce chemicals like cortisol, adrenaline, and norepinephrine, which they might be trying to extract for their experiment. With this in mind, the smartest thing to do is actually nothing. Obedience won't activate the fear chemicals they might be looking for, which makes it harder for them to get what they need without being punished for it. The man begins interrogating Renee, and she answers their questions, but that's when the assistant suddenly...
Being chill and obedient in this situation looking like the best call. From Cinema Summary's point of view.
The man begins interrogating Renee, and she answers their questions, but that's when the assistant suddenly raises the bed up. Pressing a button on her remote, a hidden door opens, revealing a chart for an eye test on the wall. They continue asking questions, and the assistant is curious if the mother noticed anything strange after her pregnancy. Confused, she tells her no, and the assistant suddenly walks away to get some medical supplies while the man takes over the interview, asking what she's most afraid of. As soon as he brings up spiders, the mother instantly goes quiet, and the kidnappers have all the confirmation they need to know she's arachnophobic. Lowering the bed back down, the woman quickly walks out of the room, but the man stays behind and suddenly presses his face against the mother's cheek. It's the second time something like this has happened since she's been here, and soon she'll find out why. With the kidnappers gone, the mother continues trying to cut her restraints open, but drops the knife onto the floor. There's no way she'll be able to escape now, and that's when she notices the door open. Another doctor enters the room and walks over to her, pulling out a massive syringe with a chemical inside. He administers the medication, and she slowly passes out as they stare at her coldly. Later, the woman wakes up from her nap and is wheeled through the building into another room, where they strap her down to a gurney. The researchers sit down to observe her as a ceiling panel slides open and a plastic covering lowers onto her arm, but that's when the mother realizes she's about to face her greatest fear. It's a giant tarantula with huge fangs, and it's being funneled straight towards her. Panicking, she begs them to stop the experiment, but the doctors tell her they will once they finish the test. They urge her to stop resisting, but she's too terrified to obey. Nothing seems to happen, and the researchers are disappointed. The experiment is a failure, and they take her back to her room, but that's when she notices that the box cutter is still on the floor. The man suddenly rubs his cheek against hers and asks if she can feel his thoughts, but the mother doesn't understand what he means. Frustrated, he tells his colleague that the woman is going to rupture, and the assistant reassures Renee it's a sign this whole experiment will be over very soon. With the kidnappers gone, the mother continues struggling to get out of her restraints until she manages to slide her hand out of the strap. She quickly frees herself in the bed and walks over to a drawer to pick up a roll of tape. Taking the box cutter off the ground, she uses it to unscrew the air vent and crawls through the duct, making sure to strap the knife to her wrist. The woman slowly moves through the ventilation system, marking down the directions back to her room. When she looks through one of the grates and notices a woman sitting at a desk. Keeping quiet, she watches as the woman presses down on a lever and a test subject suddenly comes dropping from the ceiling. It's disturbing, but the woman moves on, crawling through the tunnels as she finds other test subjects trapped in strange positions. That's when the mother realizes that they're being exposed to their greatest fears to trigger a specific reaction, and whatever it is the researchers are looking for, it must be important. Okay, this is impressive. The woman actually managed to escape and even made sure she wouldn't get lost by taping arrows to mark which direction she went. It's incredibly resourceful, but the problem is, Renee has no idea where she's going. As soon as the researchers notice her room is empty, it'll be obvious where she's hiding, and it won't take long to bring the woman back. That's why we need to get through these experiments first and wait for a better chance to escape. Now, fear is the mind killer, but there's actually a great way to trick your brain to shut it out completely. The human fear impulse comes from the amygdala, which generates our fight or flight response to any threat we face. What people don't know, however, is that fighting doesn't necessarily mean you have to become aggressive. This is a common misconception, and understanding this is going to help us hack our own brains so we won't give the researchers what they want. Now, the woman has no control over what's happening and can't run away, so our only option is to fight back, but since we're strapped down, we can't use violence. That's why if it were me, I would hack my fight or flight impulse by changing my perspective that this was not a spider, but a cute and fluffy rabbit. It might sound crazy, but the reason this works is because when we have no choice, the human brain is forced to change how it interprets the threat. Fortunately, this very concept has actually been studied in one of the most famous experiments of the 20th century called flooding. Thomas Stample proved that by exposing someone to their greatest fears with no way to avoid it, they become less afraid of it over time, and this psychological breakthrough would work perfectly for us here. The convenient truth is, tarantulas are not an aggressive species and are even sold as pets around the world. Even when they do attack you, their bites carry venom that's weaker than a bumblebee's. If we tell our brains the spider is completely harmless, then exposure to the threat will prove that we have nothing to fear but fear itself, and the researchers won't be able to get the reaction that they're looking for. Continuing through the ventilation system, the woman breaks into a bathroom and climbs down. She rushes to a window hoping to figure out where she is, but only sees a parking lot with the vehicles that were used to kidnap her. That's when she hears footsteps getting closer and hides in the cabinet.
She's very ingenuitive. She's very, like, you know, quick-witted, y'all, so I gotta give her props,
parking lot with the vehicles that were used to kidnap her. That's when she hears footsteps getting closer and hides in the cabinet beneath the sink as fast as she can. Peeking through a crack, the mother watches two men walk in and overhears them talking about the other test subjects. 47 people have ruptured, but of the 25 women kidnapped, none of them can have children. The men quickly leave the bathroom, and with the coast clear, Renee gets out of the cabinet, climbing back into the air vent. Moving through the ventilation system, the mother finds an opening in one of the turns and discovers a ladder. She climbs it all the way to the roof, but finds the exit blocked by a rusty grate. It's too tough for her to break, and the woman has no choice but to find another way out. Later, Renee crawls through the air ducts until she finds this man strapped to a gurney. It's Blake, the test subject she was talking to through the vents. She enters his room, telling him they might be able to escape, but Blake has changed his mind, believing the kidnappers might let him go since he's in the middle of his final experiment. Curious, she asks if the doctor said anything else about G1012X, and the man reveals the kidnappers think he has it in his body. Suddenly, a snake slithers out from under the blanket, and the man begins to panic. It's his deepest fear, and Renee tries getting him to calm down, but that's when she hears the door unlock. The woman quickly hides underneath the gurney as the researchers walk in and tell Blake that he'll be going home soon. They inject him with an anesthetic, but make it clear that they will brainwash him so he won't remember anything that's happened at this facility. Okay, this woman is really lucky. She's been sneaking throughout the entire building, and it's incredibly risky, but there's actually a much better way to think about how to escape this place. Now, you might be thinking Renee should have escaped through the bathroom window, but if you look closely, we can see that it's at least 2 stories above the ground, and that means Renee is more likely to injure herself, making it easier for the researchers to capture her again. So this wouldn't be a viable escape strategy. One of the biggest advantages is that we have an X-Acto knife with us, meaning we can unscrew all the vents to access every room, with plenty of people in the building that can help us escape. If it were me, instead of kicking out every vent cover and giving away my hiding place, I would monitor the test subjects, waiting until they're alone so I can help set them free and join forces. The more people we save, the better chances we have of overpowering the researchers and brute forcing our way out of this building. The biggest problem here is that we're working against the clock, because eventually they're going to walk back into the room and notice Renee has gone missing. It doesn't take a genius to figure out that if she can't open the door, she must be in the ventilation shaft. So stumbling around the building is not going to be a working strategy for much longer. The smartest approach is to find something that increases your odds of survival, and in this situation, that's going to be another person. We can't forget that if our rooms have locks, it's very likely that the doors to the outside world have locks as well. Logically, that means we don't have a realistic escape strategy without attacking a researcher, and the best way to ensure this can happen is to have someone help you. That's why if it were me, trying to find Blake here would have been the first thing I did. From there, we can use our X-Acto knife to cut his restraint and wait in his room for a researcher to walk in. If If he stays on the table and pretends he's tied down, they'll never know it's a trap, and we can
surprise
sneak up behind
attack on
them,
him.
close the door, and stab them with a knife. Then, Blake here could get up and help us knock them out before they're able to call for help. We can take their security bracelets and quickly leave the building before anyone realizes we're gone. The doctor grabs Blake's bed and begins moving him into the hallway, never noticing Renee sneaking behind them. The woman closes the door, but the mother manages to keep it from shutting and walks into the hall. This is the perfect opportunity to escape, and she begins looking for an exit. Making her way to the elevator, she steps inside and tries to head to the top floor, but the control panel won't let her go up. Renee heads out, carefully moving through the hallways until she finds what looks like an office. Peeking inside, she sees a map marking different locations around the world, and is horrified to realize this organization is operating internationally. Spotting a cabinet full of security bracelets, the mother heads into the office and tries to open the cabinet door, but it won't budge. That's when she hears a toilet flushing and panics. Someone's inside, and the woman runs out of the office, terrified that she might get caught. Spying on the guard, the woman is shocked as she notices him take out his contacts, revealing that he has 3 pupils. These people aren't human, and Renee walks away trying to understand what she's just seen. Moving through the corridors, the woman finds a dead body on a gurney, but there's something wrong with him. The man's skin looks like it melted off, and he's covered in horrific scars. Suddenly, she hears a door open and hides in a supply closet as the doctors inspect the dead test subject. They're disappointed the guy failed to rupture, but the woman reminds them they still have Renee to experiment on, and is confident she'll rupture sooner than he thinks. Rushing back, the mother crawls into the vent and heads to her room, making sure to cover up any evidence that she ever left. Quickly laying down on the gurney, she watches the researchers enter, and the man checks her pulse before leaving, as the assistant puts down a syringe full of chemicals. The woman tells her to stop resisting their experiment, and Renee points out that scaring her will only make her fight harder. Frustrated, the doctor makes it clear that they're trying to help, slipping a hand under the mother's shirt. Every researcher has tried to make skin contact with her for some reason, and the woman reassures Renee that her son will be alright as long as she follows the experiment. Okay, this is freaky as hell, but if I'm being honest, I'd be considering whether we should actually let them rupture me or not. If this was my one chance to have an X-Men ability and I missed it, I wouldn't be able to live with myself. The most important thing to consider is, if we already have this gene inside of us, it's possible that it'll rupture at another point in our lives after escaping, and we'll have no idea what to do. At least these mutants have information that can help us, so letting this happen might be the best decision to make. If it were me, I would be trying to figure out what pros and cons these mutations might have. Based on how many times these researchers have touched her skin, it seems that they can read your mind or emotions from direct contact. This would be a fantastic superpower to have, even if the cost is that you have freaky eyeballs. Now, surprisingly, this is actually a real condition known as polychoria, where your eye has 2 pupils instead of 1, but it comes to problems like double vision. For this reason, it wouldn't be surprising if these mutants had really bad eyesight, and since pupils control how much light is let in, they're probably a lot more sensitive to light than normal. Having said that, even regular people with bad eyesight have to experience this inconvenience, and wearing contacts for the rest of your life is a small price to pay for superpowers. With this in mind, I would turn myself in and say I'm on board to help them out, but only if they tell me every detail of what will happen so I know what to expect. Now, even if you disagree, the truth is that this woman doesn't really have many other options. Renee has been trying to escape for hours now, and if I'm being honest, she hasn't done a very good job. First mistake she made was not trying hard enough to get the security bracelets. If you look here, you can tell that this last case is super flimsy, and pushing on the cover was making a large gap right here on the side. If it were me, I would have pushed harder on the cover, and it might have folded enough to reach my fingers in to pull out one of the bracelets. It's at least worth a try, because if you're this close to the key that can open every door in the building, you can't give up this quickly. Looking around the room, we can see that there are 11 pairs of contact lens cases, which means there should be 11 people working in this facility. There's also a series of 16 photos on the board, which are most likely the victims. This confirms that we outnumber them, and all the more reason we do everything we can to take the bracelet and help the others, because we have the numbers to make sure that we can break out of here. The woman doesn't understand what she's doing here, and that's when the doctor finally tells her the truth. She has the ability to learn information just by touching someone's skin, and G1012X is a genetic code that everyone at this facility carries. She walks away to demonstrate how it works, but this was a huge mistake. Renee quickly slips her hand out of the strap and secretly takes the syringe while no one is looking. That's when the doctor turns around, revealing her 3 pupiled eyes, and walks over to the gurney so she can rub her face against the woman's cheek. Taking a step back, she suddenly begins morphing into a terrifying creature right in front of Renee before slowly turning back to normal. She's terrified, but seizing her last opportunity, the mother stabs the woman in the neck with the needle and quickly takes all the restraints off as the doctor passes out. She tries to remove her security bracelet as well, but it's wrapped tightly around the woman's wrist, and with little choice, she drags her away to dump her on the gurney. Unlocking the door, Renee wheels the woman out of the room and heads for the elevator without being seen by the other researchers. She enters the elevator, pressing the doctor's bracelet against the security scanner and rides it down to the first floor. When the doors open, the woman explores the hallway to see if there's an exit and finds a laboratory full of science equipment. Taking a look around, she discovers DNA samples labeled with the test subjects' names, including her own. That's when she hears someone outside and quickly hides herself as the researchers enter the room. The doctor tells his colleague that the ovum they took from Renee can be impregnated by members of their species. The woman is creeped out and tries to sneak away, but that's when the bald man realizes one of the doors has been opened. The mother rushes through the service tunnels, but the man isn't far behind. She continues through the facility trying to find an escape route, but there doesn't seem to be a way out of here. Meanwhile, the researcher turns on a computer and tracks down the woman, discovering Renee has run straight into a dead end. He presses a button to activate a trap, and suddenly a glass door seals off the hallway as sleeping gas is pumped into the room, knocking the woman unconscious. She was so close to escaping, but now she'll have to survive the final experiment. Okay, this is not good. Earlier in the laboratory, these researchers revealed they were hoping to use this woman to populate their mutant race. But the last time she was pregnant with an alien, it did not go well. Now, all jokes aside, this situation isn't as science fiction as it might seem. The doctor explained that their kind can learn information through skin contact, which is called extrasensory perception. But as crazy as it sounds, this is something that the United States government has spent millions of dollars investigating. In the 1970s, the US...
Of course, the CIA and the FBI already know about this stuff and did it.
Army began studying sidekicks and tried to find ways to use mental powers like telepathy or mind reading to their advantage. Officially, the project was discontinued and deemed a failure, but exposing these people to their greatest fears might be the key that makes all the difference, and it most likely has something to do with a process called DNA strand breaking. These cells are the building blocks of genetic code, and they naturally break apart as we age, but it can be sped up if the DNA takes direct damage or our nucleotides become mismatched, making us literally mutate. What's fascinating is that chronic stress can actually damage the body on a cellular level after long-term exposure to hormones like the ones released when we are afraid. So as crazy as it sounds, the researchers here are using real scientific theory to mutate this woman's genome. Now, Renee here refuses to surrender, and that's admirable. This time, she explored more of the building than before, but if she was thinking ahead, she could have taken advantage of the mutants' weaknesses and used the building itself against them. The best opportunity she had to do this was in the service tunnel. As we can see here, there's a backup generator nearby that's most likely connected to these lights on the wall. I would have pulled the power cable out of the socket and shut off the light bulbs. This will leave the area in darkness and give us an advantage over the mutants. They have polychoria, so they're going to have a harder time seeing clearly now, and when one of them comes searching in this part of the tunnel, they're most likely going to turn the power back on to look for us. Once a researcher plugs the cable back in, we can sneak up behind them and take them out with the X-Acto knife. Then, we can search their body for valuables like a cell phone, car keys, or their security bracelet and make our escape. There's a chance this won't work, but it's better to fight back than to hide and hope you keep getting lucky. Later, Renee wakes up in a bedroom and realizing that she may never see her son again, breaks down into tears. Suddenly, researchers come into the room and reveal she's been unconscious for a day and a half. It doesn't feel like it's been that long, but this man explains that they experience time slower than a normal human. The mother is shocked, and that's when this woman decides to test her powers. She asks her what the document on this tablet is, and Renee immediately tells them it's her medical record. There's no way she could have known this, and the man remarks that it's a sign that she's becoming just like them. The woman is terrified that she's changing and asks to reunite with her son, but the man explains that it's a natural part of her evolution and she shouldn't resist. Showing surveillance footage of her family, they explain that rupturing her genes is actually a good thing. Even though she will lose all emotional attachment for her son, she will become part of a superhuman species and take over the planet. The mother can't believe what she's hearing and asks what happens if she fails to rupture. They make it clear the researchers will do everything they can to help Renee go back to her normal life, but there's a chance she will die during the rupture process. Dragging her into this chair, restraints suddenly pop out, trapping her in place, and a mask is strapped to her head. They attach a tube to this box, and spiders start crawling out. There's nothing she can do to get them off, and the researchers leave her alone to face her deepest fear. Terrified, she starts screaming and tries to rip off the mask, but it's no use. The woman runs straight for the observation room and slams the mask against the window to break it, but her plan is about to fall apart. Suddenly, she goes completely still, and the doctors watch as she ruptures, her face transforming until the mask breaks off. The experiment was a success, and the researchers let Renee return.
What the heck? Talk about a facelift. Talk about a facelift. I mean, ladies love makeup, right?
Transforming until the mask breaks off. The experiment was a success, and the researchers let Renee return home, but something is wrong. Her behavior has completely changed, and the doctor warns her to keep what happened at the lab a secret, no matter what. Going downstairs, she greets her son, and he can tell she's acting strange. She sits next to him, telling the boy that she's found some tutors that can help him with his studies, but he doesn't trust her and wants nothing to do with it. He leaves the kitchen, but as the kid walks away, he notices the people from the research lab standing outside their home. The mother welcomes them in, but she sees they've brought a taser with them. It's a sign they're up to no good, and that's when the researchers give her some shocking news. Since she's passed her DNA onto her son, they believe he might be able to have children with the same powers and propagate their species. The leader asks her where the boy is, and she tells them he's upstairs. Moving in, the men quickly head to the second floor to kidnap him, but the woman's maternal instincts kick back in, and she quickly warns her kid to escape. The boy climbs out of his bedroom and lands in the backyard before riding away on his bicycle. It's clear that even after she ruptured, she still cares for her son, but the leader tells the mother that as long as they have her, the boy doesn't matter. They will force Renee to give birth to a new generation of ruptured children and dominate the world. It's a horrifying fate, and unfortunately for them, they don't realize they'll be paying child support for the rest of their lives.
But what do you think? How would you be ruptured? Let me know with a comment down below. Thank you so much for watching. Leave a like and subscribe, and check out the How to Be playlist for more videos like this. Until next time, have a damn good day.
You too. He gotta stop doing that. Every video he closing it out with a joke now, bro. Hey, yo. This is insane, fam. I'm gonna go watch this, fam. Like, jeez, that's fire. That's a crazy science fiction story, bruh. I like how Renee, through the whole thing, was quick-witted and actually thought, you know, actually did stuff. Because a lot of people in situations in all these How to Beats we be watching would just not do anything, you know what I'm saying? At least she came up with ideas and was able to get herself off the table and still go through the vents and, you know, look around the facility and all of that stuff, fam. Another great video from Cinema Summary Adventure Gang. This one was absolutely insane, bro. Would y'all want the mutant powers? Let me know in the comments section. Let me know what you thought of my reaction, and if you enjoyed it, be sure to like, comment, subscribe, hit that notification bell. Let me know what I should react to next. Thank y'all so much for watching. I'll catch you in the next video. Peace.